Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Well, hello. Boy, that's quite an introduction. I am the author of Badge 411. Boy, see, I'm not doing a mirror image thing, so it's kind of confusing for me. Anyway, Badge 411, and it says down on the bottom by Kurt Niemann. Well, who in the heck is Kurt Niemann? Well, it's me. That's Kurt Niemann is my pen name. I've explained in other times that I had, as a very young child, a very small child, I had a close companion named Kurt. And when I decided to go to a pen name, I decided I would use his name as a pen name, kind of in honor to him and in memory of him. Why do I have to have a pen name? Well, some of us, not all, but some of us are old enough to remember a guy who played a detective named Joe Friday. And he ran a TV and radio station, a radio program dealing with Los Angeles Police Department. And whenever any of the programs would begin, you would always hear the announcer say, the names and places have been changed to protect the innocent. Well, I like to think that I'm innocent, but I'm talking about some 80-odd stories. Ella, hello. Big hello to you, too.
And hello.
And I worked primarily with juveniles during my 32 years.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Afternoon, Bob. During my 32 years as a probation officer. You don't want to be writing about these kids and their problems and their issues and use their names and their addresses and whatnot, unless you enjoy being litigated by, well, say, I don't know, half the nation's attorneys. So that in order to protect myself, I changed the names and the places of all the stories in my book. However, I will tell you, all 80 of the experiences absolutely did happen and happened in the way that I described. So I'm not lying to you. I'm just trying to give you the story and protect myself
And the kids.
and the
their
kid
families.
and yeah, everybody. Before I go any further, this is my wife, Shirley.
Hello.
And boy, am I glad she's my wife. As a matter of fact, today, among other things, we're going to be talking about a martial art process called Tai Chi, or Tai Chi Chuan. And when I first met Shirley, she wasn't familiar with any of this, but she trained. I was one of her trainers, and finally, I was her husband. But she is a master instructor with Tai Chi, and she teaches Tai Chi at a residential treatment center for adults, a very expensive and high-class residential
And some
treatment center.
teenagers.
And some teenagers. And she gets results very much like I get when I've taught it. Let me talk about that for just a little bit. Now, first, let me tell you, juvenile. Well,
Thank you,
hello,
John.
John. Thank you. Working juvenile means an awful lot of different areas. We could be talking about on the streets and in the home. We'd be talking about working in residential treatment centers, in rehabs, in detention facilities, in corrections facilities. A probation officer of the type that I represented got involved with the juveniles and their families. Once the juvenile had been arrested for violating a criminal law, but in juvenile cases, they call it juvenile delinquency. Until you're 18, you're a juvenile. But actually, and I'll footnote that too, they can be and often are tried as adults, depending on their ages and depending on the nature of the offense. The primary job of anybody in the criminal justice system is protection of the community, so that if we can work with an offender, with them still living at home, we'd prefer to do that. It's less interrupting for the juvenile, for the family, for the neighborhood, for the community. It's less expensive, so that whenever we can, we work with the juvenile at home, and that's called probation. In other words, probation is imposed on a person as a consequence of having been found guilty of violating a criminal law. But although they be evident, they be eligible, I should say, to be in a jail or in a prison. Rather than do that, the judge puts them on probation. Probation comes from the Latin word probos, meaning to prove. In other words, they're given a chance to go back home under the supervision of a probation officer, in some cases myself, and don't mess up again. And as long as you don't mess up, they're fine. Hi, Ethan. Happy to see you again.
Yes, day 5.
Day 5, you betcha. We also work in a detention facility. I should tell you, I've mentioned a couple of times in prior days the difference between jails, which are generally operated by cities and counties that house people who are pending trial or pending sentencing, or they're serving time for a misdemeanor, which means a lesser criminal offense. Misdemeanor and felony. Okay. The juvenile detention center is the equivalent of an adult jail. Okay. It's run by the county, and Very often probation officers, and I was happily one of them, get an opportunity to work for a while in a detention facility with juveniles. And in some cases, people start their careers off in the detention facility and then go to streets probation or whatever. What I want to say is that Cyril Cole. Hi, Carl. You're new here? Well, I can't wait for you to know more about Badge 411.
And glad you're on the show here watching us. Thank you.
Not everybody that violates criminal law is a monster. Some are, but very few really can fit that bill. The issue for a probation officer or for a corrections officer is, how does this person need to change their ways of thought and behavior and get back out into the neighborhood and be okay? My own bias, and oh gosh, yes, I do have some biases. My bias about that is, if you're really going to work with offenders toward change, it's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be done a lot quicker when you work with juveniles. They're younger, they're not totally developed, they haven't been totally trained, so that you have an opportunity to get them to change their modes of thought and behavior. Eloise, money is a big factor. But
Yes, indeed. You're right about the money.
Oh, yeah, yeah. One of the things when I was operating the Juvenile Detention Officers Academy, which was during the last 6 years of my career, one of the things I would say very often to the new people is, stop thinking the way you do in order to understand where the juvenile is, where the offender is. You got to think the way the offender thinks, so that, hey, Ethan, well, thank you. He says it's a great book because of his sincerity and dignity. Well, thank you.
Yes,
Boy,
I agree.
really appreciate that. In other words, if you're going to understand criminal behavior, violations of the law, don't do like most people do and say, oh, you got to be crazy to do that. No, nobody's thinking right if they're doing that. It doesn't help to understand what's going on with that offender. You have to learn to think like the offender, okay? So that, just as an example, one of my many car thieves over the years was said good morning to in the detention facility by myself. And I said, why did you steal that car? And the kid said, I had promised I was going to take my girlfriend to the state fair. I couldn't do that without a car. I had to have a car. And that's why I took that car. Was it wrong? Yeah. Was it a violation of criminal law? Yeah. It's the way he thought.
Okay.
Little Mike, imagine that you came to a house of one of the offenders, you find them fighting with their wife. What would you do? Oh my gosh.
Turn around and run. No.
No, I will tell you, that's a whole different thing. But I will tell you that for any law enforcement officer, whether you're uniformed police or you're detective, your probation, your parole, one of the most dangerous kinds of scenarios you're going to meet is domestic violence. I can't begin to tell you how bad it is. And I do write a little bit about that in my book, because one of the things that you encounter in juvenile that you don't encounter in adult is incorrigibility, unmanageable behavior. Kelly,
No, we do not have another
No,
book.
no, it's not. It's not. If you're thinking about the original book, The Powder Blue Negligee, that is this book, but it's been improved and the title has been changed. Believe it or not, the title, the original title, The Powder Blue Negligee, uh, came to be because in one of my earliest experiences in a pre-sentence investigation was a home visit where I was asked to come to the home of the offender and talk with the family about possible alternatives to commitment to the State Department of Corrections, in other words, the juvenile prison. And when I knocked on the door that morning, the door opened and there was Mom, and she was a professional model, and she was smiling broadly, and she was wearing a powder blue negligee, and she said, "Come on in." Fortunately for me, I did not come on in. I made an excuse to go, and I went and I called my supervisor, and my supervisor got a big kick out of it, didn't let go of it for over a week. But Shirley here thought that would be a great title for the book, and I agreed. It sounds like a great entry for the book. And what it turned out was an awful lot of people thought that I was writing a book on pornography, for gosh sakes. So that there it was. When I came to Reader's Magnet, one of the first things that the lady said was, let's go for a different title for this book.
Thank
And
God.
yeah, she was absolutely right. So I chose badge 411, which is my badge number. Jessa says she agrees. Everybody can change given the chance. Yes, everybody.
For the
But
most part.
a key is they have to want to change. And here is a problem with the person on probation. They're still in their community. They're still in their home. They're still in the original spot where they got in trouble in the first place. How do you work with the person so that the person does not want to revert back to the way it was before they were arrested and found guilty? It can be difficult. Again, the person himself, the individual offender, has to be the motivating factor. And in the case of working with juveniles, you need to work with the juvenile's entire family to help promote change. That kid did not get raised in a vacuum. That doesn't mean parents are always at fault. Please get rid of that thought. Parents are not always at fault, but there's an awful lot that the kid learned at home or the people let go of that can lead to a thought process that will ultimately get the kid into trouble. So that, little Mike, what message you use to track probationers' progress? Well, ideally, number one, they don't get arrested again. Now, some people will say, well, that just means they didn't get caught. Well, okay, they didn't get caught. But I like to think that they just didn't get arrested because they didn't do the bad stuff again. You just never know. Another thing is, are they, in the case of a juvenile, is the kid going back to school? Is the kid progressing in school? Does the kid have a job? Does the kid have a different set of friends? And again, there is something that can be a great difficulty in some cases. I did 12 years in the inner city and worked primarily with juvenile gangs. Once you're in that juvenile gang, you are in that juvenile gang. And if you're going to stay in the same neighborhood, you're going to get an awful lot of pressure from the other gangsters to continue the bad stuff. The kids got to really be motivated, and the parents have to be motivated to prevent that kind of thing, return to gangster activity. There's so many things involved in this. But again, and I've told this story before, I had a 14-year-old young gangster, brother of another young gangster, who came to my caseload. And he's totally covered with tattoos. And he, boy, when I first met him, he had been beaten up horribly by members of a rival gang. Boy, was he an angry young man. Stephanie, thank you. Likes my values and perspective. Boy, thank you.
They are wonderful.
You got to keep it together. That comes to, why am I wearing this gi, this martial arts jacket? Well, it's a subject that I hope I was going to get into today. I'll get into it a little bit, I'm sure, but I'll get into it more, I'm sure, tomorrow. Monday. Yeah, that's Monday. Anyway, this young man was really angry. He was just purely gang oriented. Ultimately, we got him in school. Ultimately, we got him a job. I got him a job working with a janitorial service. Believe it or not, this kid's attitude started changing once he had started working and earning money and going to school. And in a few years, he had saved up enough money that he bought part interest in that janitorial service. Then, as I followed him into his adulthood, he bought the service. Then he bought another janitorial service and merged the two together. Then he sold those services and bought into an insurance program, so that he was working insurance, and he was bringing in more money annually than I was getting. So that you just never know. From a totally tattooed, very angry 14-year-old young gangster to a person who dealt with insurance programs as an adult. You just never know.
Now, someone was talking about your involvement with a young man that became an attorney.
Yeah.
This person too. And you did get message from someone that became an attorney.
Yeah. It's and in my off times, I'll say, well, became an attorney, huh? Well, how did that change? But don't take me wrong, attorneys. Ethan says,
this is what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah, the young man's life could have turned. Well, you've just got to be interested in what it's going to be like in your community. And that's my community I'm talking about, and how to bring about change. Centuries ago, a Chinese guy, thank you, Ella, for the salute. Centuries ago, a Chinese gentleman, a philosopher named Sun Tzu, wrote The Art of War. And it's just a wonderful book. And what he's really talking about is how wars are, how conflict is, and how to avoid it. And he is very highly honored in the martial arts I'm involved in. Since, at least 1980, I have been practicing Kung Fu, Chinese Kempo Karate, and Tai Chi Chuan. And what I'll tell you...
Says, listening to this makes me teary-eyed.
Well, thank you, sir.
Can
Yeah, sometimes it's hard for me to hold on to myself when I think about some of these people I'm talking about.
And then John says, how soon can a person file for a probation?
To be a probation officer
talking about the person to file for probation. I think he's maybe talking about adult probation.
Well, in Arizona, and I'm sure, I think probably in most states, to be a probation officer, you need to, in terms of education, you need to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree in a related field. And mine was sociology. Subsequently, because I got to come to design and operate a detention officers academy, I had to have a master's degree. And the master's is in criminal justice, and it's a dual master's. I get criminal justice and social work. And that's actually what what you are as a probation officer. Is you are a social worker that's working within the court system, as well as getting involved in law enforcement. Sun Tzu sets the stage. The idea in martial arts is not go out and make all the ladies faint inside because you can break bricks with your bare fist and break boards and kick butt and do all this other stuff. That is not the goal of the martial artist. I'm a 7th degree black belt, and I will tell you that my goal is to avoid conflict, avoid turmoil.
That's nice.
Thank you, Sean. And this is why one day I thought, you know what they're teaching us and what we're teaching the lower belts in the martial arts schools can very well apply to youngsters whose lives have been so messed up so far that now they're in a juvenile detention facility. Well, what is my favorite part of the book? I don't know.
Impossible to choose.
All of it. And I'm going to tell you that for everyone, the art of Tai Chi, which is martial arts done very slow. In other words, instead of imagining a fist coming to you, you give it this action like that. Slowly learn how your mind and body works together. Learn how that kind of thing can work. Understand who you are and who you are not. Put together your knowledge, your power, and that is the way to learn control. Learn how to control yourself. What are your goals in any particular thing? Like the kid who needed to take his girlfriend to the state fair. That was his goal. So what he's got to understand is what are the possible consequences from you meeting whatever that goal is? What do you have to do to get there? And what will probably happen, good and bad, because there's always the unbelievable. What can happen as a consequence of what you do? So I introduced teaching Tai Chi in the detention facility. I was very selective in which juveniles, in which juvenile units or cell blocks I would train, but I would interview them, and everybody there knew that I was a martial artist, so it wasn't a surprise. What was the surprise is that my goal was to teach some of this good Tai Chi to the kids. And the first reactions I would get was, oh my God, he's going to teach these kids how to kill the guards. No, what I want to teach these kids is how to look at the world a little differently and how to avoid getting into trouble, how to avoid offending people all the time. This is the process. And for I don't know, a couple of years, I did teach Tai Chi there in two of the juvenile detention facilities, and not one of my students, I had a belt program for them too, not one of my students got into further trouble because they learn how to coordinate the mind with the body. Learn what your strengths and weaknesses are. Shirley, one of my former students, who was so impressive and so good that I married her.
You have 1 minute, dear. 1 minute.
She's a 5th degree, and she teaches Tai Chi at a residential treatment center that's internationally known and very expensive. And I love to hear the stories she tells about the changes that happen with people who are learning how to do this. Okay, Little Mike says, were there any people who didn't want to be included in the book, and how did you handle that?
They didn't know.
No, I was very selective. I was very selective. And I'm guessing that some of them probably know that I must have written about them, but I haven't had any feedback at all.
No negative feedback.
No
anyway.
negative feedback, that's for sure.
And we are down to 1 minute, or a little less than 1 minute now.
Oh my
we're
gosh.
Gonna have to say goodbye for today.
Oh man, I'll get more into this on Monday. You probably wonder if I ever have learned how to shut up, and the answer to that is no.
So we have to say goodbye now, and we'll address this other question on Monday about teaching martial arts.
Thank you, Zuri. Wow, yeah, those kids were very proud. The kids in juvenile who were wearing yellow belts and orange belts through my training there. Yeah, they did love it, and they did stay out of trouble. Wow.
So,
Well,
I'm assuming we must be
well, as long as
at
we're
the end. I don't know.
I don't know, but what I'll do is I'll say, get into understanding the offender's thought process. How and why did they get to choose that particular thought process? Learn to understand it. Then you can learn how to change that or help the individual change. You don't change anything. The individual gets motivated to change and works on it. I'll get more into this on Monday. Thank you for listening.